When Tyler Wittkofsky was 19 years old, he left home and he fell into a dark pit of depression because he had been diagnosed with mental illnesses. He turned to drugs and alcohol. He attempted suicide and failed. You do not want to miss Tyler's inspiring story of his struggle with bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, PTSD, and anxiety, as well as his battle with addiction.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Tyler Wittkofsky is an extraordinary talent who weaves tales that sweep you into unforgettable adventures. Beyond his writing, he is also a fervent podcaster, a mental health advocate, and a blogger. With his wife Grace and his furry companions, Dutch and Belle, Tyler embarks an awe-inspiring journey across the United States, chronicled on his blog, Adventure with Coffee. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you, Carol, for having me. I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to sharing my story with you and your audience, hopefully touching some lives and changing some people's perspectives on life.
That sounds awesome, and thank you for that. Now, let's start with your story. Share your story, the good, bad, and the ugly, and start from the beginning, wherever you would like.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So my grandmother was a high school English teacher, later my elementary school principal. And from a young age, she had always encouraged my writing and pushed me to do better, to be better, and to always believe in myself. You know, growing up, I had undiagnosed mental illnesses. I wasn't diagnosed until the age of 21. And, so I didn't understand why I saw the world different. And neither did my family. Back in the early 90s, mental illness really wasn't a big thing that was paid attention to. So many of my family members didn't even know, what I was going through. And, my grandmother, bless her heart, she didn't know what I was going through, but she still always knew the right things to say whenever I needed them. And I remember whenever I was in elementary school, she used to bring me to school with her early. And, the principal gets there 2 or 3 hours early and before the kids have to start class. So I'm sitting there and, either taking a nap. We didn't have cell phones or video games or things, like that back then. And so, what I did was I used to write stories and draw comic books and leave them on her desk. And she used to love them.
Oh, wow.
She's probably still got all of them. I could guarantee it. She's got them all somewhere. And, that really sparked my love for writing. And, my grandmother was a big inspiration in that. And I went through, elementary school, middle school, high school, and really kind of lost this love for writing because, with high school and things like that, you have so much technical writing and so much writing you have to do for the school that you kind of get burnout from it. So I had stopped writing for a little bit, and I had an opportunity after I graduated high school to move out of my mom's house, who was a single mom raising me and my brother. And I took that opportunity because I wanted to be independent. I wanted to see the world for myself, not from the sheltered lenses of the house I grew up in. Nothing wrong with that. My mom did everything she could to give us the best life that we could and make sure that we really had the opportunity to grow and develop into good young men. And so I took that opportunity at 19 and moved in with a guy I worked with. And whenever I moved out, I didn't have my safe space anymore. I didn't have my mom, my brother, my grandma, my grandpa, and I really started to spiral into the depression. I started losing hope, losing focus, and I was also going to class for my bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing. I was working full time as a restaurant manager at a local Applebee's, plus two other Applebee's that were around the state of North Carolina. So I was traveling a lot for work. I was having to be back, for 8 a.m. classes, not getting off of work until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was just a combination of that and the mental illness really took a
Mm-hmm.
toll on me.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I turned to alcohol and drugs. I wanted something to numb that pain.
Right.
And, while alcohol and drugs are good at numbing the pain, they're not good at keeping the pain away. And that's ultimately what I needed. So after I actually attempted suicide one night in 20 early 2016. I had taken a bunch of pills and was drinking bottle after bottle of vodka.
Wow.
And I called my best friend, Matt, and he's still my best friend to this day. Me and him have been friends for a decade now. But I called him and I said, "Hey, man, killing myself tonight." And he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, no, no, don't talk to me." And I just hung up the phone. And I laid my phone down, and it rang and rang and rang. And he called me 3 or 4 more times. I didn't answer. And at this point, I'm starting to really in and out of consciousness. The pills and the liquor are taking their effects on me, and I'm
Mm.
losing that grip on reality. And I'm like, this is it. This is my final moments on this earth. And then my phone rang again, and I just happened to look over, and it was a
Hmm.
number I didn't recognize. It wasn't Matt, and I was like, something in me said, pick up the phone. Well, it was Matt's dad, Mr. Tommy. He actually passed away about 6 months after this incident, but he was one of my best friends too. And he
Hmm.
told me, he said, what's going on? Talk to me. And just for some reason, I felt comfortable opening up to him and telling him what was going on.
Awesome.
And one of the things that stuck with me so much, and I still say to this day, was his dad was a mechanic, so he spent a lot of time working in a mechanic shop whenever he was younger. So he told me, he said, life is kind of like this. My dad used to tell me if I was trying to turn something with a wrench or a socket and I couldn't get it to budge, I'd be like, Dad, I need help. And his dad would come over, look, and say, you know what, your wrench isn't broken, so keep on turning. And he's like, that's what I want you to do. Your wrench
Hmm.
isn't broken.
Hmm.
He's like, keep on turning, keep on living. You've got so much to live for. And that was really a pivotal turning point in my life. It made me realize that I needed to go seek help. I went to first a therapist and then a psychiatrist, and really got diagnosed for things. I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, anxiety, and depression. And that was, like I said, that was in early 2015. It was a culture shock. Uh, in that time period, there was still a big stigma around mental illness. I mean, there's still a big stigma around mental illness now, but it's getting better. Especially bipolar disorder. Every time there's a shooting or something like that, you hear people on social media saying, "Oh, they must have had
Right.
bipolar." So it makes,
Right.
it makes you feel so small and like you need to hide. So I finally got on the medicine though. I really kept it a secret for a while, and then I met my now wife, Gracie. We worked at Applebee's together, and um, I fell in love with her when I first met her. And I was like, I'm finally in a good place where I'm stable. I'm on a medicine combination that works for me, and I was like, this has got to be a sign. I knew from the moment I saw her. I told the my work mother, Marty. I told her, I was like, I'm gonna marry that girl, and she's like, No, you're not. No, you're not. And here I am. Here I am. 9 years later, married to her. So it really was a dream come true. And then, so once I got all that figured out, and we spent our first 3 years in a long distance relationship. She was going to college. about 4 or 5 hours away from me. And, I was managing restaurants. And she eventually convinced me that she was like, you don't have a passion for running restaurants. She was like, you have a passion for marketing. That's what your degree is in. I was like, yeah. So she finally encouraged me to look for a job in the career in the industry that I really wanted to be in. So
Great.
I yeah, I was able to get my first marketing and PR job at Brunswick Community College, which was actually my alma mater. I went to Brunswick Community College for a year and a half to get my associates right out of high school. And so it was kind of cool being back there and giving back. Things progressed. I moved up in my career, moved up at college, moved on to another career. And eventually, me and my wife decided that we were going to settle down in little old Leland, North Carolina. And we got some land, bought some land from my grandparents, bought a house, put it on there, and we moved in. And well, that was a hassle. But while we were waiting for the house to be built, we actually moved in with my grandma and grandpa, the same grandma who was my school friend. And she asked me one day, whenever I had moved in, I got home from work, and she asked me, she said, "Are you still writing? Do you write any stories?"
Hmm.
And, I told her, I was like, honestly, I got so burnt out from school, basically what I said earlier. And she's like, "Well, while you're living here, I want you to do one thing for me." I said, "Okay, if grandma asks you to do something, you're going to do it." So she says to me, "Why don't you write me a book?" I was like, "Okay, you know, well, let's give it a shot." So I thought over the next couple of weeks, I was like, "What do I want to write about? What do I want to write about?" Had no idea. And then on the way home from work one day, going back to her house, I pulled onto the road that leads to her house, and I saw the title, "Not Alone," with "not" in parentheses. And I was like, it's going to be
Hmm.
a fictional story based on my true life struggles with undiagnosed mental illness to the point where I finally became stable. And I never
Wow.
intended to share it with anybody outside of my grandma and my fiance, or my wife now, but my fiance at the time, and the rest of my family. And it was just something that was meant to be for them. And everybody that I showed it to, all my family, all my close friends, they were like, "You need to publish this. This story is so powerful. It could change so many lives." And still to that point, I had been ashamed of my mental illness.
Right.
It was
Right.
very stigmatized.
Uh-huh.
And so I made the plunge. In 2019, I decided that I was going to get the book edited. I was going to go through the cover design process and formatting and get it all taken care of. And I published my first novella, Not Alone, the first edition. And I was super scared, super nervous, um, because this put a target on my back. I was in a very public position. I was a public information officer for a local government organization, so I was all over TV. I was all over magazines and internet, social media. Speaking about what the organization was doing, and our plans and all that good stuff. So I was very public figure. And I was like, this is going to put a target on my back. People are going to see this. They're going to think differently of me. They're going to assume
Hmm.
that, I'm crazy, that I don't deserve this job. But you know what? I was like, if I can help one person, then it's totally worth it. It's totally worth whatever backlash I get. And that really jump started my mental health passion, my mental health advocacy, and being able to grow as a human being and be able to accept myself for who I was, you know, not despite my flaws, but because of my flaws. And it was a really life changing moment for me. Um, Later in 2023, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That was a new diagnosis that I kind of struggled with that, even though I had been in mental health
Uh-huh.
advocacy for about 4 years at that point. Borderline personality disorder has a whole other stigma that I had
Right.
to
Right.
learn to cope with and learn to accept myself before I could let other people try to accept me. And if they didn't accept me, then I didn't need them in my life anyway.
How would you encourage others in a similar situation to seek help and not be embarrassed or ashamed of?
I think the biggest thing for me was having a strong support system around me. There was a lot of people that I wasn't sure were going to be, there for me whenever I told them this information, whenever I came to them and said, hey, I was diagnosed with this. Um, and then people, like I said, and people before the diagnosis, whenever I was struggling with these thoughts of suicide, these thoughts of death, these thoughts of self-harm, whenever I finally started to tell people about them and build my network of trust and security and my safety blankets, they were able to help me realize that, what, the people that are truly meant and deserve to be in my life are going to love and accept me no matter what. Like I said, I love myself because of my flaws. So should everybody else in my life who truly, truly cares about me. And that's my biggest advice is have a support system that is there for you. Build it. Trust people. Don't let the fear of the stigma get in the way of you trusting people who are close to you, because if they truly love you, if they truly care about you, they're going to accept you. They're going to help you take those steps to get better. And that's truly sometimes what we need is a little bit of poking and prod.
I think that everyone is hearing what you're saying, and that is an encouragement. We're going to take a short 15-second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about your books and your podcast. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
So what are you doing now, Tyler? What is your motivation now? What adventure are you on per se?
Oh man, I think the better question is, what am I not doing? So a big motivator for me in life, we lost my brother-in-law in 2020 to a car accident. It was actually about 2 months after me and my wife's wedding. So he was a year older than me, and it really struck me because he had, 4 kids, a wife,
Oh,
a family, and it was just one mistake that changed everything. And for me, that was a wake up call that I really needed to take life by the horns and do what I wanted to do, to enjoy life. My brother-in-law was the biggest advocate for enjoying life. He didn't care what anybody thought of him. He was going to be him. He was going to do what he wanted to. And, I said, what better way to honor him than to live life how he would want me to live life. And from that point, life changed a lot. I started a couple companies that we've since shut down. My wife and I sold our house back in May of 2023 and moved into an RV full time. Now
wow.
we're traveling across the country traveling across the United States in a 30-foot motorhome that we got from that we bought from my grandfather. And we named it after my great grandmother, Dink. So we live with our 3 dogs in this 30-foot RV. One of them is Dutch, and he is a German Shepherd Chow mix. Another one is Belle. She is a German Shepherd Whippet mix. And then we actually, the week or two before we left for our first adventure in 2024 across the country, my brother-in-law's ex-wife called us, and she could no longer keep his dog where she was staying. So she asked us if we could take him, and my brother-in-law's dog. So without question, we were like, yeah, he's an older dog. He's a full-bred American Pit Bull, and he's 10 years old. So he's not got much life left. And so we jumped at the opportunity. We were like, number one, this is like having part of Christian with us, who was my wife's brother. And he gets to spend his last years, chilling out. He was always a protector for four kids and a single mom, and always running around in the wild. And now is his time to chill. He just, we have him in the RV. We travel the country. He gets to go on his ride off into the sunset. He gets to explore new places. So it really is. It's so much fun having him. He is, it is a challenge having three big dogs and two
No
humans.
kidding.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have it any other way. The only things
They're
we
your
would
family,
change.
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We of course we wish we could have a bigger bed, but that'll come in the future when we upgrade RVs. Our plan right now is to hit all 50 states in the next 2 years. Then we're gonna do a MLB stadium tour where we hit all of the MLB stadiums in 1 year. And then we're going to do a national parks tour where we hit all the national parks. And our final tour is going to be an amusement parks across the United States tour. So we're going to be doing this for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even longer before we really decide if we want to settle down. But we love this lifestyle. And we actually blog about it on adventurewcoffee.com, where we talk about, you know, reviews of breweries and restaurants and attractions and campgrounds and traveling tips and different blog posts about craft beer and craft coffee. And, we really just try to, a lot of people back home tell us that they love seeing our post on social media and reading our blogs because it lets them live vicariously through us,
Absolutely.
traveling the
Right.
United States. They get to see all these wonderful sights and all these wonderful places. And, it's been such a fun opportunity. And it really, my wife and I both work remotely. And, I am also a author and podcaster. So I do a lot of that on the side. But, it's been a great opportunity for her and I to really grow our connection. Whenever we were living in a house, we lived in the house for 3 years. And of that 3 years, we were probably alone for a total of 5 months. Um, First, my brother moved in with us, and then my wife's sister, and then my in-laws, and then my best friend moved in with us, and it became to a point where we weren't able to spend time just us. So now
Right.
that we're on the road,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
obviously we're both working remotely, sitting right across from each other all day. And a lot of people are like, I don't know how you do it. They would drive me crazy. But you know what? I love this girl so much that I just want to see her every single
Oh,
waking
that's
moment that
so
I can see her.
precious.
Yeah,
Wow, that's awesome. My husband and I have been married 52 years and we still feel the same way. So, I hear you loud and
love it.
clear. It doesn't have to change. So, your books, you've written more than one, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, tell us about
Like I
them.
mentioned, yeah, yeah, of course. Like I mentioned, my first novella was Not Alone. I actually rewrote that and developed it into a full novel in 2023 and re-released it as a second edition. After the first edition of Not Alone, though, I actually published a poetry collection. It was a lot of poetry that I had um, scribbled down in my phone on notebooks over 2012 to 2016,
Oh,
whenever I
wow.
graduated high school, moved out, and first started dealing with the mental illness, and then to whenever I was not cured but diagnosed and medicated and stable.
Right,
So
right.
the poetry really shows a transformation and a glimpse in my mind through those years. So I had gathered them in a document and never really intended, to do anything with them. Just wanted to have them. And after I published Not Alone and saw how that impacted people, I was like, you know what, maybe my poetry will do the same. So let's do it. So I published it. After that, I started a book series called The Sunflower Kisses. The first book was The Seeds of Love, and it is a 5 book series, and it's actually loosely based on me and my wife's long distance relationship in the beginning.
Hmm.
So this, yeah, so the story goes through the first 5 years of their relationship. They start off long distance, move in together, go through the trials and tribulations, a lot of drama, and eventually get married. The My favorite thing is that I'm actually working on book 2 now and hope to have that released sometime in 2025. So that one is called Love and Growth, and there is a major, major, major plot twist as soon as you read the book. Like, as soon as
Love
you
it.
open the book and you read that first chapter, if you've read the first book, you're going to be like, what? So definitely recommend checking out that first one and be ready for the second one. So after that, I took a little bit of a hiatus from writing books and turned to short stories. Wrote several short stories that were published in anthologies from publishers like Creative James Media and Broken Bones Press and Inked in Gray. So I wrote A Deal with the Devil, which is published in Creative James Media's A Dark and Stormy Night. It's about, title's pretty self-explanatory. It's a man who makes a deal with the devil to try to find true love. And there's, again, big plot twist at the end of that one. Breaking Point was actually loosely based on a high school relationship I had. And the girl had cheated on me with over 25 people. And that was kind of the premise for this story, was going through how that made him feel and how he finally snapped. And that was published in Creative James Media's Happily Ever Never. Eroke was a story about the destruction of the planet in 2022 for Bag of Bones Press, Annus Horribilis. And basically, this alien species that lives under the ground, basically controlling the earth whenever things get out of control or too bad. They created the flood, they created the meteors, they did all this to reset humanity. So basically, it's talking about how, let's be honest, the world has shifted for the worse, and a lot of things have changed. So they reset the earth with a quote-unquote alien invasion. So that's kind of the basis of Eroke. I've got a couple other stories that I'm working on based on other Twitter X posts that I've found. So done a lot of that. And then last year, 2023, I published my first co-authored book, which was a fantasy book called Potent. It's the first of the Enamored Echo series. I wrote it with my best friend, Kelsey Ann Lovelady, who was also the VP of marketing at my indie publishing company whenever we ran it for 3 years. And it is a modern day telling of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I write as Oberon, and Kelsey writes as Titania, and we throw them in the modern world. They've been separated for centuries. We throw them in the modern world. They have to come back together and save the world. So that's going to be a pretty different series for us. Each book is going to be a different fairy tale or folklore that we put in modern times. So they're not all connected, but they will have like little mentions of each other. So we're still working on some other ones for that. And then this year, 2024, I published a book that was very special to me called The Principles. As I'm sure most people can guess by the name, it's about my grandmother. She was the first female principal in the rural county, female high school principal in the rural county of Brunswick County, North Carolina. She was an inspiration to so many people, and she always wanted to write a book talking about her experiences in high school and the funny things that happen and the serious things that happen. And she kind of had the same mindset that I did. She went back and got her master's degree, and of course, with being a principal, there's writing a lot of reports, and she just kind of lost the passion for writing. So I picked up where she left off and decided to, kind of tell a story that was like hers for her. And it's the story of Wanda Hare, who is the first high school female principal in a very rural county. And, she goes through a lot of trials and tribulations. She faces discrimination. She faces threats and, making enemies that used to be her friends. And so it showed what she went through, because of this decision that she made to better her life, and the gender inequalities back in the late 80s. So that one, my grandmother, it didn't release until March of 2024, and I made sure I finished it, formatted it, got the cover done before Christmas of 2023 so I could give her the first ever copy of the Principal's
Aw.
Principles. And yeah, she really loved it. And you know what? That's all that matters to me.
So you're living the dream.
I'm trying anyway.
Excellent. Well, thank you for all that. That is so interesting. Now, so tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, I've actually had quite a few podcasts over the last 3 or 4 years. I used to be part of a online blog called the Dark and Belle Universe. It was two blogs, Legends of the Veil and Mists of the Darkness. I actually took it over in late 2020 from the original owners and ran it myself for about a year. Basically, the premise of these blogs was it was a multi-author blog. Each author wrote as a different character from mythology, history, supernatural people, things like that. In modern times, there was obviously there was a story. They came together and created. At first, it was the Legends of the Veils, which was like a supernatural Justice League. And then in 2021, we branched off into Mists of the Darkness, which was like a supernatural Sinister Six. So it was kind of the back and forth, and we we started a podcast for that. It was called the Dark and Veil Podcast, where we interviewed authors from our blog, and we talked about different writing techniques and things like that. We did that through 2021, and then I shut down the blogs because it just became too much work for one person to do. And with that came the end of that podcast. But that was not the end of my podcasting career because I loved it so much. My buddy Matt, who I've mentioned several times already, came to me after I shut down that podcast and said, "Hey, what do you think about starting another podcast with me?" And 2021 was height of COVID hysteria and people just being rude to each other and hating each other, disagreeing. And we wanted to show that you could have a discourse, you could have a discussion where you don't agree with the other person, but you can still have it civilly. You can still sit back and be friends at the end of the day. Because he and I both have very different political views, very different societal views. And we would get on there and talk about them. And, just even if we didn't come to an understanding, we would agree to disagree and just go back to sipping our beer. And so we put that on hold. We did that for about a year. We did 2 seasons of that, and we put it on hold. Matt and I both were going through a lot of personal things and needed a break. We're actually trying to bring this back later in 2024, probably October. He is actually in the process of renovating his house to put a podcast studio in there, and so once he gets that done, we're going to be bringing Backporch Parlay back and doing it from the road. So looking forward to that. 2023 to 2024, I started the Cook the Books podcast, which was in conjunction with Tea with Coffee Media, my former publishing company. And it was kind of the same thing as the Dark and Veil podcast, but it was more centered around helping other writers in general. We didn't really talk about, our books. We did interview like our authors, our staff, but we always had a subject. We did some on the LGBTQIA plus community and what it's like to be a member of that community and write about it and be open about it. We did mental health episodes. We did plot development episodes, world building episodes, and my friend Kelsey Ann Lovelady that I mentioned earlier that I wrote Potent with, she was my co-host on that, and we had a really good time doing that. And now that the companies have both closed down and I'm kind of free right now, my wife and I are actually talking about doing an Adventure with Coffee podcast starting in 2025. So we will be doing, bringing our food reviews and campground reviews to audio and maybe video and talking about, life and traveling and what we've been up to and relationship advice and just trying to, make the world a better place by showing people what we do. We seem to have, maybe not things figured out. I don't think anybody has things figured out, but we have a solid relationship. We have a solid foundation. And I think if we can help other people, see what we're doing to make it work, that maybe it'll help more people be able to make their relationships work, their lives work, their travels work, whatever it may be. My wife and I are both very passionate about, helping people and giving back to the community and the people around us.
Well, that was quite the summary. I appreciate that.
The better question would have been, what don't you do? That would have been shorter.
Exactly. So in summary, and going back from where we started this today, which is you were down and out and you're not there anymore. There's been a huge transformation. So in summary, what would you say to anyone in the audience who's at that point where you were all those years ago?
My biggest thing is reach out. Even if, you need somebody who is not going to judge you, find me on social media. Find my author pages. Find my, I'm not active on Twitter anymore, but I am very active on Instagram and Facebook, Threads, TikTok. Find me on one of those. Shoot me a message. I get a lot of spam messages, so don't say something generic like, "Hi, how are you?" Say, "Hey, I heard your podcast interview with Carol, and I was really inspired, but I'm struggling to, find myself or accept myself." Come to me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm going through the same darn thing.
Right.
And, even if you don't have anybody in your life, I will be that person for you until you can build a stronger foundation. I've always been that person for everybody in my life. And I don't mind it because I know deep down in my heart that if I can save one person's life, then I've lived a life worth living. And I've had multiple people tell me that my writing, my podcast interviews, my blogs have changed their life, have saved their life. And that is one of the most powerful feelings to me and one of the most meaningful and fulfilling feelings to me. And I want to do that for as many people as possible, even the strangers that I don't know out there. You are deserving to be here. You are capable of more than your mental illness tells you you are. You deserve to be here, and there's so much more left for you to accomplish in this life. Don't give up hope. Find me, let me help. I'm always here. I'm not a therapist, not a psychiatrist, but I'm a listening ear. I'm not going to give you medical advice. In fact, my advice may be to go see a therapist. But I will be there to listen and be a friend and just be a confidant. So please don't do this alone. That's my biggest piece. Don't do this alone.
A life worth living. I loved what you said. You deserve to be here. Love that. Don't do this alone. That's the takeaway right there. Don't do this alone. You don't have to do this alone. That is incredible, inspiring, and motivating, and definitely encouraging words to anyone who is struggling. I thank you for that. I also thank you that your willingness to help others reaches all facets, not just through your books or whatever, but also to have a one-on-one, to touch base with people, because you can relate. So therapists often are very good, as you mentioned, but they don't necessarily can relate specifically in those areas that you have walked. And so this is exciting to be able to share this with this audience. I trust that many were helped and touched today. And I thank you so much, Tyler, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.